Wake up.
And second by Shardul, and I'll just roll call it. Shardul,
Yes.
Amy. I can't hear Amy. I'm not sure. It shows you're unmuted, but I can't actually hear anything you're saying. Just nod if you're a yes, so we can see you. All right.
Give us
just
the
saying,
thumbs
yeah.
up. Yeah.
Yeah, Paul is a yes as
Yes.
well. And I am a yes. All right, so this is Finance Committee for Thursday, April 11th, 2024. And we have Shardul Parmar, Paul Benjamin, David Phil, and Amy just dropped off, but I'm sure she'll be joining us back in just a minute. So we'll give her just a second to pop back up. And Andy just texted me Windows is updating on him, so he'll be here shortly as well.
Always when you're in a hurry.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll just hang out for a second till Amy gets back on because we have her minutes approval that we need to do. That's first on the agenda. And oh, and I should also note for the record that this meeting is being recorded and all votes will be taken via roll call. Still can't hear you, Amy. Can see you just fine, just can't hear you.
Come on over to town hall, Amy.
Let's see. Does anybody have the dates on those meeting minutes in front of them? See if I can find them in my email here.
Oh, there they are. Yeah, there's January 25th, February 8th, March 14th, March 21st, March 14th. Sorry, they're out of order. And then it says March 21st again. Oh, there's attachments. I'm sorry. Yeah. So it's January 25th, February. Yeah, wait, let me go back. I was just making sure I wasn't muted. January 25th, February 8th, March 14th, March 21st, and there's an attachment for the 14th and there's an attachment for the 21st of March, both March.
Okay, if everyone's had a chance to review them, could I get a motion to approve those minutes?
Just make sure everybody's okay. Had a chance to look them over?
Yep.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve. All together?
Yes.
Okay, so a motion to approve the minutes of, when we do the dates again, January 25th, February 8th, March 14th, and March 21st of the FinCom.
Second.
All right, motion by Paul, second by Shardul, and Amy, are you up and running? Nope. All
Amy,
right.
just going by my own past mistakes, check the volume on your actual keyboard too.
All right. I will roll call it for the three of us at least. So Paul.
Yes.
Shardul.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. And Amy's given a big thumbs up and it's being recorded, so we'll count that as well. All right, so those minutes are approved, and it looks like Andy's just joining us as well.
Amy, the only other thing I could think of is maybe a permission if your Zoom has been updated.
Yeah.
So it might not have permission to the microphone. Only other thing is to open the control panel for the sound and do a mic test to see if it's even registering.
There's Andy. Andy, can you hear us?
I can hear you fine. Just watching my computer bounce for the fourth time. Some Windows updates going on here. So I'm on my phone for now until that process finishes. I apologize for the delay.
All right, so for the record, Andy Klepaki's here as well, and Amy Fiden is as well, but she's having audio issues, so she's here. later.
Amy, if Amy calls my office, I can put her on speakerphone and you'll hear her through that.
She
Until
can actually call Zoom themselves, like Zoom, the number she can contact if she goes
Yeah,
to
that's
check
right.
it out.
Phone
Go
number.
to the agenda, actually. The number's on there.
Okay. Yep, looks like
Thank
she's calling now. So number 3 on the agenda is reserve fund transfer, legal budget, and enterprise fund, but I believe we are going to hold off on that for tonight. Is that correct, Carolyn? All right, so we'll pass over that and move to number 4, final review of the FY 2025 town budget. The committee will discuss the FY 2025 town budget in detail and will vote on the recommended budget. Carolyn, do you want to start off with that?
Sure. What's the best way to go through that for you?
I mean, we voted to make the recommendation to the select board last week, just to, that basically we were going to leave the budget as presented by the town administrator's budget and go forward. So my understanding was we were just going to wait on a recommendation for everybody to be here tonight so that we could all vote on it. Is that everyone's recollection?
Yes.
Okay. So I think unless,
That would be this one.
so unless you have any changes or anything you really want to discuss or any questions from any of the committee members, I think we're just making a recommendation on the budget.
Yes, it's your, yes. Finance Committee recommends the budget to town meeting.
So I guess, does anybody have any questions, concerns?
Where's Amy?
Can you see me?
We can hear
We can
you.
hear you.
We hear you though. That's almost as good.
Oh,
there you are.
she is.
All right, I got my phone working.
Okay.
Good job.
So Amy, we're just, we need to vote tonight on our recommendation of the budget. And
Yes.
so I was just gonna throw it out there for any last questions or anything from Carolyn or Linda before we did that.
I guess the only question would be to Carolyn or Linda to make sure we want to do the OPEB now and not in the fall, just in case. I want to do OPEB. Is there anything I need? I just throwing it out there for discussion.
As far as, I guess, what are your thoughts on OPEB? Do we reduce the contribution or increase it, or what are you looking for?
Well, I guess I'm saying, well, what if there's an what if we don't have enough to fund things in the fall? Because I think we're going to be really tight in the fall. And that's where we take from sometimes. Not that I don't want to do OPEB and I don't want to, but I'm just worried about the fall. And the ambulance and all the increases. So I wanted Carolyn and Linda's input on that to make sure that they're comfortable with this.
Well, practically speaking, I never move the money in the first few months of the year, just keeping an eye on things. I never begin to move money out of our fund into OPEB until after the fall town meeting. I never have, and there's no reason I would change that. And then once town meeting passes, I divide up the amount by the number of months. Let's say I'm going to pay it over 5 months, and I divide our total by 5 and put that much in each month. So we take advantage of wherever the market might be. We sort of like there's a name for that, Amy, and I'm forgetting it. Dollar fund averaging or something like that, or Paul, something like that. Anyways, I put the money in 5 pieces, so I didn't put it all in right before the market dropped or things like that. So even if you voted it through, and if things do look like we have an issue, that would be a second opportunity for you in the fall to for us to say, we're moving it, we're going to change that budget item in favor of something else. So I promise I would leave it there and allow that to be moved. But I don't see it as a problem at this point, because we have only spent in free cash, even with the articles and other things coming out of free cash, and including the ambulance, we're not only, but we are spending free cash that has already been certified, and our free cash should be available in the fall for new certifications as of July 1. So I don't have an estimate at this point, but it should be several $100,000, whether that's, we assume that there's going to be, as there have been the last few years, enough to cover any increases in the budget in the fall. But as I say, we have a fallback position if there are other considerations at that time. So I would be in favor of doing it now. Worried about that slippery slope. Once you stop, it's hard to get back in.
Sounds good to me. So I would, unless there's any other questions, I'm ready to make a motion.
Sure. You want to go with the motion? I'll second.
Okay, I'd make a motion to approve the town administrator's request for the budget. Proposed budget.
Second it.
Right, motion by Amy, second by Paul. Any other discussion on this? All right, I'll roll call it. Paul?
Yes.
Shardul?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Okay. And we'll go back to the agenda here. I have number 4, final review of the FY 2025 annual town meeting warrant. The committee will discuss the individual articles on the warrant. The committee will vote to make recommendations on each individual article. Consent agenda, prior invoices, omnibus budget, enterprise fund budget, sewer, water, Hadley Media, revolving accounts, Community Preservation Act articles, fire department ladder truck, water tanks, drinking water asset management plan project, ambulance, purchase of real property 234 Middle Street, levy, and Hadley Media Enterprise Fund. So, Carolyn, take it away.
Okay. So, well, just, and just remind me, you do vote on every article, correct?
Every financial.
Yeah, I think the only ones he didn't was like planning board. Something.
Put the ones that relate to finances on that extra sheet I sent last time, then I updated it for tonight. So
Okay.
I see it as the first one being Article 7. Is that right? The water plant filtration?
Yeah, even though, it's not allocating money, it's allocating a spending limit. I would like to explain the revolving account. There's one change, and I just want to is that okay with you, David? There's one change, and just for those of you who aren't familiar with the revolving accounts is basically money brought in for a specific type of program or service, and then money is brought in for that, and then the expense to put that program on. So I'm going to direct you to the COA revolving account. That was a van account, and it was a older account that they were using for fares that came in and then paying the drivers or any expense related to the van. But they don't use it anymore. They've gotten a much more robust van service, and so that has really become a separate with grants. It's grant funded, and PVTA pays a subsidy to keep that going. So the COA, what we had been doing was using trust accounts for the programs at the COA to pay for instructors. The money that comes in for instructors pays out for instructors, but that's not the proper use of a gift account. So we wanted to broaden the scope of the Council on Aging revolving account. This does not allocate money. This is their spending limit. Mass General laws at town meeting for this type of form of government, we have to give a spending limit for each of these accounts. So it's not allocating money. It's just letting them know that's all they can spend on it. So this is the first year that we're including all the programs at the COA that is self-funded through charging for the fees, charging for a class or charging for a program. But I think 5,000, it was 3,000. I think 5,000 is a safe limit to start with that could get a change in future years. So that everything else has stayed the same for those revolving accounts. So I just wanted to highlight that it is changing how much they can spend out of that account. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Carolyn or Linda, are you able to share a copy of the warrant with us, just so we're all looking at the same thing?
Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm looking at mine. That's true.
Do we mind, can we go in order so I don't have to flip around? Can we start with like one and just go down and I can just mark them all?
So I went to the first one that you guys would vote on. So, but yes, if you want me to go back.
Well, the ladder truck is the first one, right?
No.
Article
So,
1 ladder truck?
That's confusing. So this is the warrant because it's the annual town meeting, there's an election right after it. This is able to go on the warrant. See how Article 1, you don't vote on it. It's just basically an announcement that you're
Okay.
gonna be, this is gonna be you're gonna be electing these vacancies. For the ballot question, that's gonna be that you'll be voting on at the ballot if it passes at the annual town meeting. You would be, this is just notice that the ladder truck question will be on the ballot, so you don't have to vote on that. But
Oh,
you,
it's not going to be talked about at town meeting.
no,
does-
yeah, yes, it is. It is. So this is, I'm sorry, this is so confusing. It took me a while for Jessica to get me to figure this out. So Article 1 is for annual town elections. This is basically an advertisement to tell people that the elections are going to take place. These are the vacancies that you're going to be voting for. And oh, by the way, this year, you're going to have a ballot question. So that's part of the warrant. This is one warrant for the elections. You still have to vote. It's further down. I think it's Article 16. You still have to vote on it because it can't go on the ballot until it passes at annual town meeting. Annual town meeting is basically giving the town permission to put it on the ballot.
Okay.
I know it was confusing. We've all been trying to explain it the best way we can.
So we don't need to do, so grants, not Article 2.
Is this showing up in sharing?
Yes.
Okay, I'll leave it right where it is then.
So I guess that was my question to you, is you do vote on these? You want to go over the consent agenda?
Yeah, we
Okay.
usually vote on every single one except for towards the end in the planning board.
Okay. So Article 2 is, most of these is what's on the annual town meeting each year. So this is just authorizing the select board to apply for and expend grants. You just need to have that at an annual town meeting.
I make a motion to recommend Article 2.
Seconded.
Motion by Amy, second by Paul, and I will roll call that. Paul,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Shardul,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Okay, so 5-0.
I can go on?
Yeah.
Did you-
Yep.
Okay. Chapter 90, this is the money we get for from the Department of Transportation. Basically, usually it's we pave roads. So this is again just allowing the town to expend Chapter 90 funds, to receive and expend them to maintain roads and bridges.
I make a motion to approve Article 3.
Second.
Motion by Amy, second by Paul, and I will roll call again. Paul,
Yes.
Shardul,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well.
Article 4 is just authorizing the treasurer to borrow money.
I make a motion to approve Article 4.
Second.
All right, that was a motion by Amy, and then I missed, who seconded that? Was it Andy?
No, Chardul.
Oh, Shardul. Okay, sorry. Amy and second by Shardul, and I will go through a roll call. You moved around on my screen here. So Paul,
Yes.
Shardul,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes,
and David, yes.
This is something, Article 5 is something we have to do annually, and authorization for me or the select board to award contracts for that for terms exceeding 3 years. This includes renewals and extensions.
Motion to approve Article 5.
Second.
Motion by Paul, second by Shardul. Roll call, Andy,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Shardul,
Yes.
Amy,
yes,
and David, yes.
And then I gave the explanation on the revolving account.
Motion to approve Article 6.
Second.
Motion by Shardul, second by Paul.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I'm trying to mark down exactly where the change was. So can you just, so this Council on Aging is 5,000. I want to
Yes.
make sure I understood it.
Mhm.
And the change in what we're seeing from the warrant. Do I have to mark a change? You said there was a change.
So the name was Counts on Aging Van. Now it's just the Counts on Aging revolving account. The number went from 3,000 to 5,000.
That's the only change. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I thought there was a change in what you gave us from what was printed, so I wanted to mark. But it's just what was changed from previous
Yes.
years. I just misunderstood. Thank you.
No worries.
Anything else on this one?
No.
All right, Paul,
Yes.
Shardul,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes,
and David, yes.
So Article 7 is the water treatment plant filtration membrane reserve. This has been on for a few years, and this is just, it's extremely expensive replacement of filters. And it's really building up the cost of what it's going to be to replace them. I think they last 10, I think I put it in the explanation. Yeah, they last about 10 years. So it's just something that was put in place a few years ago to keep building up with that. This was on the consent agenda normally, but our moderator, Kirk, would prefer that it would come out. So this won't be on the consent agenda. So this won't be grouped into consent.
I'll make a motion to approve Article 7.
Second.
Motion by Paul, second by Shardul. Anything on this one?
No.
Okay, Paul,
Yes.
Shardul,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Amy,
yes,
and David, yes.
These are prior year invoices. This typically happens if they get missed the year before. We need authorization. Once the fiscal year has closed, we need authorization at town meeting to pay for what I call older bills in the previous years.
Motion to approve Article 8.
Second.
Motion by Andy, second by Shardul, and I gotta ask, what is Goosetown Community?
That's what I wanted to know.
It's the communications that the fire department, police department uses in DPW. It's part of their I think it's part of their radio and communications.
Okay, sounded like cartoon related or something. All right, Paul,
Yes.
Shardul,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Amy,
yes,
and David, yes.
These are the budgets.
Yeah.
Not can we ready to just go right by these and we'll plug in the numbers from your sheets.
I mean, we voted unanimously to recommend the budget as written anyways, so I think as long as the same numbers are plugged in, you can put a 5-0 recommendation on there. Is everyone okay with that?
Yes.
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 Yeah.
So we're at Article 11, Hadley Media cost. This was the year, every 10 years, you have to renew the contract with, for Charter Cable Services. You do need an attorney. It's a specialized attorney who does these renewals. And this was the cost. We had taken it out of the general fund. It should come out of the Hadley Media Reserve Fund. So but that needs town meeting to authorize that. So it's basically going to be reimbursing our legal general fund, which pays for labor, litigation, and general legal services.
You said, is this once a year? Or how often?
Every 10 years.
Oh, 10 years.
We just didn't budget for it last year because it was the 10th year and we just hadn't thought ahead.
So I mean, this is a big chunk. It's gonna take a big chunk out of their reserves.
What's left in our reserves?
Yeah. Was this in what we chatted about with Alex, a few weeks back, or was this not yet in the mix?
I don't think this was in the mix at that point.
Okay.
Carolyn did tell me about it earlier in the week, I believe. So I am aware of it.
Okay. It just kind of moves up the little bit of added urgency to find a solution for Hadley Media even more now. So
Yeah, and Alex is so on it. He's doing a lot of research. So you're going to see more discussions about, looking ahead and what our options are.
So is all of this just legal fees?
Yeah, so it was a little bit more than the initial discussions that we had, in the late fall. It is, if you followed any of the select board meetings, it's a very difficult process. And you can't go out to bid, you can't go out and choose who's going to provide charter for you. It's very, the cost for a new company to come in is you have to redo everything, hardware, everything. So
And that's the only thing either.
I'll let Alex explain.
No
Go
other
ahead, Alex.
no other company would want to compete anyways, even if we gave them the best whatever, they wouldn't do it. So
Alex, can you just explain real briefly what some of those hot topics are that get so complicated when we've been discussing this whole contract and how Attorney August has walked us through this? Could you mind doing that? That might be helpful.
yeah. So there's a lot of deregulation that's happened over the years, where pretty much it was able to make it so that Charter and Comcast can just gobble up a lot of smaller companies. And now they're the two biggest companies. It's to the point where they look to they're going to monopolize any community that they can, and make it so that they don't compete with each other. That's one thing, and plus there would be an economic cost to taking out all Charter's equipment and putting in all Comcast equipment to provide cable and internet and telephone for residents of town Hadley.
And
So
there's I think the important thing too is there was a little bit more extra effort in trying to reach unserved areas such as Honey Pot, et cetera. So Alex is still working on that through a different grant that actually Spectrum has to apply for. But Alex is still working on that. But we are done with the legal fees.
So
How did the negotiations go?
as good as Charter wanted it.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's really the
kind
same
of-
almost for every community.
I guess so this isn't just this is providing for the internet service and the cable service for the entire town. It's not just the Hadley Media, the television, I guess.
No, oh, yes, no, it's charter, it's internet.
So,
It's-
so these negotiations are beyond, this is actually for,
Yeah, it's not just Hadley Media, it's for everybody, every house in the area to be able to have access to a cable-driven internet or streaming or television feed.
so it's more than just Hadley Media.
Yeah,
Yes, oh, yes. Yep.
Okay, so that was my, I just saw the number and I'm like, that's a, meaning I've had closing costs for large loans that were smaller than that. So that's why I was wondering what exactly this is.
Well,
Okay,
if it is
The
more
only
than,
thing
if it is,
that only thing that Hadley Media or any other PEG access operation would get out of a cable contract or a cable license is a share of PEG fees PEG franchise fees up to 5% per federal law, and any capital grants which Charter is no longer giving out to communities.
right, so I guess my question is, what was there to negotiate that's worth $14,000 to the town here? Other than that, we
Nothing
surrender.
worth.
It sounds like we surrender is the only answer we would have had going into this negotiations. So why spend all this money is my question.
'Cause
and also if it affects more than just Hadley Media, why is
Why
all
why
this
are we
money
dumping
coming
on
out?
them? Yeah,
And why is all this money coming out of Hadley Media Fund if it affects more than just Hadley Media?
Because you wouldn't have Hadley Media without the cable company.
I understand that, but I mean, if the negotiations are about, are town access, right? You know, for.
it's a greater infrastructure cost. It's just it's kind of like the water treatment facility or
Right.
something like that. It's not just Hadley. I guess that was just my, I think everybody's
I agree with that.
confusion.
Right, so why are we taking, what is all the money come out of the Hadley Media Fund, I guess? If we're already concerned about what's left in the Hadley Media Reserve Fund, this serves more than just Hadley Media's interests. Why are we taking all of that legal fee out of the Hadley Media? I know it's gotta come from somewhere, right?
Right, but their pot's almost dry. So I agree with that. I just don't know how to change this equitably, like, $2,000 to Hadley Media and put the rest on the general budget. What I would recommend, or less than that even. In some respects, I think Hadley Media is a collateral gain that we get by having this company provide our service at this point, because it's already it's already in the code, the laws as to what Hadley Media can be funded from all this anyway. So there was no negotiation there, was there? To get an we can't get an increase. We can't change how we're funded unless that new bill goes through. So. I don't-
So it does sound like it's a very simplified negotiating process. It's not. So that
Okay,
I understand what you're saying, but they're both dependent upon each other. Hadley Media exists because of that is.
yeah, I understand that. I just
I gue-
don't
I guess
think
that-
it's proportional here.
Yeah, the point is that we would have to spend this type of money if Hadley Media didn't exist. We would still have to spend this money, right? Let's say we didn't have a Hadley Media. Would we still have to spend this money
Every 10 years.
every 10 years?
Yeah, well, I don't know that.
Hold
I would feel more comfortable getting more information to give it to you.
Okay.
So my understanding is that, yes, we would, because I believe under the mess of cable laws that the state has, there has to be a contract for the communities for them to provide cable service for whatever reason. So I think as far as I know, but I believe that, yes, this would be an expense regardless of whether Alice was here or not.
Okay,
So hold on 1 second. I'm in favor whatever makes most sense to anyone, but I'm looking at Pelham, for instance. They have a cable contract, but they don't have a PEG station in Pelham.
Right, but so that's what I'm saying, that they have to have a contract with a cable service provider, but without necessarily having a public access channel of some sort.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like it's an equitable, as Paul said, equitable distribution of the actual cost to Hadley Media. As that entity shouldn't, I guess, carry the burden of things that are really beyond its existence. It really has more to do with a general cost that the entire town has to go and incur every 10 years just because of, as
Right,
it was
and-
stated about the law.
I think
And
Linda-
without this Hadley Media Fund down the road, if it gets to that point, then this is just, why, if the cable company is charging the town for the service, I mean, they should be getting money, and then we then have to pay this lawyer to then go ahead and negotiate every decade. Which sounds complex, but it also sounds somewhat mechanical. So, eventually, without the Hadley Media Reserve Fund, then it's just going to be on the town anyway. So I go back to my original point, backed up by Paul and Shardul. Why is this all falling on him?
I think Linda was trying to jump in.
I'd like to point out that all of the income comes from cable, comes from the cable company. All of the income that supports the budget, all of the resources are from the cable company, and all of the reserves that we have here and that we ever had in the reserves came from the cable company. That's why the negotiating the cable contract for getting those funds does logically line up with paying it from those funds. It doesn't mean that you can't fund it another way, but that it does make sense to line it up this way. And yes, it does benefit. It's not benefiting a department any more than the water fees benefit the water department. The water fees, our water service benefits the entire town, but it's still paid out of water fees. So there, it is consistent with the way we handle the enterprise funds, the other enterprise funds. The factor that's different here is that you're seeing that we're going downhill, and that is a factor that you certainly can consider. But I just want to make it clear that it does line up, and you're welcome to make another recommendation. But this is logical, so you may take it from here. At some point, there's probably going to need to be a subsidy for the town, from the town, for dealing with continuing our Hadley Media. I don't know that the 12 or 13,000 in this year is going to hasten that time. I think it's going to be in the next 2 or 3 years, and I think we better have a solution. As David said, this means we need to come up with a solution even quicker. Well, a little bit quicker. So let me just say, if we use the fees, if it comes out of Hadley Media reserves, we would be the fund would be left with a balance of 106,000. If we don't use it, it would be a balance of 118,000. I don't think it's a critical difference to the fund or our future solution, and it does alleviate in any ways. That was our recommendation. But as I said, you may make other judgments, just the way select board makes a judgment sometimes, and something in the like what we were that the town's going to take on a portion of the water tanks or the wells for the water. That's a financial and a political decision, and that's all. There you go.
So I'll throw my 2 cents in on it. So I don't think it's necessarily fair that, so to speak, that Hadley Media is bearing the burden of the entire process. But I also think that in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really have an effect on the long-term viability of Hadley Media the way it is now. I mean, that 13,000 isn't going to make the difference of whether we can squeeze out one more year of Hadley Media operating or not. And, if we didn't spend this money out of Hadley Media, okay, we'd maybe get a couple extra months before we're going to have to subsidize Hadley Media from the general budget anyways. One way or another, it's coming out of the general budget, whether it comes out now or if it comes out in 3 years when the Hadley Media reserves are depleted. So although, you know, looking at it doesn't quite seem fair, but I think that it's making the change now isn't really going to extend the life of Hadley Media under the current system. So I would say just, my opinion, just leave it as it is for now, but we do need to find a long-term solution here.
Definitely.
And by next week, I should have a complete spreadsheet of as you may know, I reached out to many of the municipal stations in the Commonwealth, and I'll get you all more information of what I found from that.
While we have you, thanks for all your advocating with the legislature for some additional funding and whatnot. So,
Yep. If it's okay, I can give a quick update on that. There's no action needed by the Finance Committee. So for that bill has been extended again to May 8th. However, the problem is, even if tomorrow they passed it with flying colors, it would have to go to the Ways and Means Committee before it goes to the floor for a vote. Obviously, it would go to the House and the Senate and then the governor's desk. They have until July 31st to do that. By the way the state goes and how just government in general goes, I'm not sure if it would pass this session. I'm sure they would refile it next session. But each time they filed it, it has gotten further into the legislative process. So, but then again, all the risks will go into that session too. It only 0.5% of all bills that go through the legislature actually get passed within a session. So there's a lot of molasses in getting bills passed. So
all right, so thoughts on this?
Well, after, I appreciate the discussion and the work that Alex is doing here, and, thank you, Linda, for filling in that information. And based on all that, I motion to support Article 11.
Right, can I get a second for discussion at least, or a second so we can take a vote on it? You don't have to support it if you don't want to, but I need a second to vote.
I'll say the second.
Okay. So a motion by Andy, second by Paul. Any
I
other?
have, the only other discussion I have, just to throw it out there, I totally agree with you on, I don't feel like it should be coming out of Hadley Media as well. But I do believe a portion of it probably should. But I don't believe the whole thing, because I feel like they pay into administrative costs for other things. So I do believe that it should be broken down, but I don't know what that number would be. And to keep things moving, I would go along with whatever ends up being in favor, but I do think it probably should have some be under the town and some be under Hadley Media. So just thought I'd throw my 2 cents in.
Anybody else before we roll call it? Okay, Paul?
Tough call here. All right, I'm gonna, for expediency's sake, I'll vote yes.
All right, Shardul?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Amy?
Yes.
And David, yes.
Can you tell me who made the motion?
Andy.
Andy.
Andy,
And I second.
Andy made the motion, and who made the
I
second?
seconded.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right, number 12.
And this is really just, whoops, okay, this is really just how it's presented. There's admin cost, it gets allocated. This is in consent agenda, Article 12. So a portion it goes to open space preservation, a portion goes to historic, and a portion goes to housing resources.
And there's a second part of it, Carolyn.
And then 10,200 from the Community Preservation Fund. Sorry, I have a puppy that's tearing me apart over here.
Want me to explain that?
Yeah,
This
thank
is-
you.
Okay, this is basically that, this is their expenses, that they have 10,200 in expenses. Some of it is for, some is for salary and some is for administrate, there are other costs, and they use consultants and they pay an agency in Boston, administrative expenses. And so they've designated the two places for that extra 10,200 to come from. This is basically their budget.
All right, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion by Paul, second by Andy. Any other discussion? Roll call, Paul,
Yes.
Shardul,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes,
David, yes. Okay. Let's move to 13.
Who's the operator of that?
Not me.
Okay, here we go. 13. Oh, so these are projects that have not been completed. So this is again is the consent agenda.
Okay.
It's extending the deadline. They have been beginning to put a 2-year deadline on projects, but if it's not done yet, we need you have the opportunity at town meeting to extend it, the projects. Any questions?
No, can I get a motion?
Motion to approve Article 13.
All right, motion by Shardul
I'll
Second.
and a second by Andy I had. And I will roll call. Paul,
Yes.
Shardul,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Amy,
yes.
David, yes.
And Andy, I don't know if you want to explain the articles.
I mean, we did talk about it in a past meeting. Do you guys want me to go over it again, or?
No, I'm okay.
I'm good.
I do have a question on it.
Go ahead.
Because maybe I just don't remember. So the 150 for the Phelps farmhouse, did they put a percentage in?
Yeah, this is, they are looking for funding sources. Oh, boy. And they have collected some money. This is a UMass-based organization, and they're looking to, again, to stabilize the site. And this is an initial phase, and we will probably be seeing further phases down the road.
This is a UMass thing you said, not Port of
That-
Phelps?
No, it is Porter Phelps. There, I'm sorry, there are some, they have some consultants that are working with them that are from UMass. I apologize. And it is the Porter Phelps Museum folks who are behind the drive here.
Okay.
But they've involved from some a historic architect and again, some UMass resources to help keep this place as historically accurate as possible, and to do the work in a method that will preserve the building. And the first thing to do, though, is to stop water penetration, which is going on to part of the structure. So they're going to put a freestanding roof over the building.
Okay.
Supposed to be a long-term structure. That way they can then repair roofing, etc., underneath it, make it all water.
They didn't give you an estimate on the full project, though. You said it's an ongoing thing.
Yeah, that question was asked, and they don't really have a, it's still early in the process to assess the entire thing, and but as mentioned by some committee members, this is, truly what the historic preservation aspect of this is about.
Mhm.
So, unfortunately, they haven't had enough time to go over the site and fully assess what what it is, but suffice it to say, at least initially, they need to again, get stabilize the site, and so they can continue to do this research. I don't think that this seems to be a longer drawn out project rather than trying to go for everything all at once and commit to it and try to get it done as they're still going through discovery.
Thanks, Andy.
Motion, please, to recommend.
So moved.
Motion by Paul,
Second,
second by Shardul. And Paul,
Yes.
Shardul,
yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Yes,
Amy? Yep.
yes,
On the gun there.
sorry.
Okay, any questions? Again, we reviewed this article in the past. Be happy to cover it again if anybody has any questions. Okay, hearing none, I motion to support Article 15.
Second,
Motion by Andy, second by Shardul. And Paul,
Yes.
Shardul,
yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes,
and David. Yes.
All right, and 16 is for the acquisition of 234 Middle Street, adjacent to the DPW. The total cost is $325,000. The intent is to, the benefit will be for the new building and the new garage. So the costs have been divvied up between the general fund for $227,500, and then between water and sewer, $48,750 for each. And I can explain how we derived at those numbers. And this is after speaking with the department, members of the DPW, Scott and Gary. So the one of the most important aspects of this project is the garage, as well as the wash bay area, and as in storage for these trucks that we've spent a great deal of money on. So all of those trucks are served by all three departments, as well as getting washed. The mechanic area is also serves all three departments. So we felt this was it. We didn't do a third and a third, which we often do with other aspects of that are impacted by those three departments, the two enterprise funds and the DPW building. So this is everyone agreed upon who was involved that this would be the fairest way to help cover the costs of that building, of acquiring that property. And there is a house on the property and a garage that will also be helpful when the time comes when we actually are building the DPW building. It is a place for employees, as well as the garage will help with some storage for a lot of the stuff that's going to need storage during the transition.
Capital Committee, at the meeting right before this, we voted unanimously to support this as well.
And I can say from the DPW committee that we participate in, the sentiment here is there's nothing quantified yet, though, that the town will realize a decent savings in the design of any new DPW by getting this additional elbow room, not only in the transition, but afterwards. So things won't have to be moved as much or condensed and put upon on top of each other, be able to spread out a little bit more, won't have to go 2 stories necessarily. I mean, it just really adds a lot of extra space for the design folks to get something a bit more appealing without having to spend as much money.
And just not having to put an elevator alone might save the $300,000 that this land is going to cost.
so I agree with the property, but I'm not in favor of the funding source. So I mean, I definitely agree with this property, that we should acquire this property. There's no doubt. But I'm not in favor of the taking our money out of our stabilization. Can you tell me why we're not going to take it and borrow like we normally do for capital?
That's an option. What we were juggling here is if I can just zip down to number 21. And if you have the funding sheets, 21 is for us to pay that 250,000 out of the million, for the town to, we needed the money for the 250,000 towards this $1 million grant. So there's 250,000 there, and then there was the 227,000, or basically 325,000 here. Clearly, we didn't want both out of stabilization, but that's also a lot to add onto the borrowing at once in the spring. It just seemed like maybe we leave a little bit of borrowing till the fall town meeting. This article, for example, and both of those articles I'm discussing here, we weren't aware of months ago. What's going to happen between now and fall meeting? Something else pops up like this. We're just getting into a lot of borrowing without increasing that part of the budget. So I was playing it both ways. I mean, it's we don't want them both out of stabilization, and I thought maybe not both out of borrowing either. So it is the Finance Committee that makes the recommendations as to the funding source. The capital, the vote of the Capital Planning Committee is not dependent on the funding source. They voted to do the acquisition. So, and I did say to them that it would be, Finance Committee would be determining or approving the funding sources. I think the allocation would be the same either way. Let's say we borrowed this. If we were going to borrow it, Amy, or all of you, from the for the stabilization portion, we would probably borrow it for the part coming from water and sewer also, but payments, the allocation would stay the same. So in paying back the borrowing, we would have 15%, which is what those 48,750s are, 15% each. We would have 15% of the payments coming out of water and of sewer, and the balance coming out of general fund. That's basically it. It's a judgment call. If you have a different recommendation, the borrowing rates aren't as great as they used to be. They're better than any of us could get if we went, to borrow. So they are closer to 5%. At one point, they were under 1%. So I'm interested in hearing your thoughts.
So I'm strongly against the taking it out of the stabilization. We're already taking 55,000 out of the stabilization for the OPEB. So because we're already going into that, but that's going from one stabilization to another. Stabilization's more for emergencies. We have not added to our stabilization. I mean, we took out, we put back in, but we've tried to stay at the 2 million. We will be dipping down below, or if anything, we should be going higher with the stabilization because of the cost of what things cost now. So my feeling is I rather see it come out of the borrowing. If we're uncomfortable with borrowing both, I would be more in favor of the 250 on Article 21 being a debt exclusion. I rather not see a debt exclusion. I rather see the both out of borrowing, but if I had to pick my second choice, it would be that Article 16, the property be borrowed, in Article 20, the 250 from Article 21 be a debt exclusion if we could not do two borrowings.
Linda, do we have we could say the room in our capital, capital expenditure plan for the fall to cover both of these under capital if we were to purchase no other capital in the fall, or at least one of them? Or how much of that have we used up already with this?
You mean if this was happening in the fall, could we support both of them?
No, I'm saying if we chose to short-term borrow for these versus buying capital in the fall that we normally would have bought in the fall, could we cover this under short-term borrowing?
We can cover it under short-term, I mean, we could. Even short-term borrowing, we have the option of how long we're extending out the payment. That's what we've been kind of doing that for the last couple of years. Since the special town meeting of 22, we've been borrowing more than we've been paying down and pushing out. And we do that by pushing out the time frame in which we're doing the payments back. We used to be, instead of paying anything that we're borrowing in the next 2 or 3 years, it's now out to 4 or 5 years. And one solution to that is one that the finance committee has approved a couple of times, is you take the amount that we're paying back, that portion of the budget, this debt and interest, and you increase that. So if you increase that by another 100,000, then that's another $100,000 worth of capital that we can do and spread out a little bit more. I think it's a lot of borrowing, the 325 and the 250. I also think it's too much to take out of stabilization. And I don't know what's coming up for fall. And another thing with the borrowing is that we have some large borrowing items coming up. We have still the fire truck here tonight, and we know that the DPW building itself is going to be a lot of borrowing, and we've got the wells coming up here tonight. I don't know. Those are going to be debt exclusions, or at least one of them will be a debt exclusion. I don't know. I was just trying to split the difference. So it's optional. I mean, we'll figure it out. If we do it borrowing, and we'll figure it out probably by increasing that debt and interest amount in next year's budget.
Okay. And I know that has been a goal, like Amy said, to keep stabilization around 2 million. I mean, the only time I can think of recently where we kind of dipped below that was for COVID, when we kind of had to fill the funding gap in the budget for things. And at the time, we had pledged that we'd put it back, and luckily we followed that pledge both on finance and select board. But it's kind of no guarantee that it'll happen again, even if we make that pledge. So,
yeah, we felt pretty lucky then that we could do that, but also we could have done something else with the money, and we didn't. That was a decision made that no, we are going to pay that back. It was a priority, and we hope that it would continue to be a priority, but it depends on who all of you are and who's on select board and who's in my seat. So we'll see. Just so you know, we are over 2 million now. This is what I've been doing with my head down, because in your sheet, I have us starting at 1.995, just under $2 million. And I realized that I hadn't checked that I haven't changed that figure in a few months. But we are at 2.15 million right now. So it does fluctuate. So it's worth having the money in the stabilization account, because we make money on it.
Right.
And whether it's more or less than what we're borrowing, that's not my, I don't make those kinds of projections.
And my only concern is if let's say this property, right? If it had to go to a debt exclusion vote, I mean, this is something that, I mean, the spending has to be approved in order for the property to be purchased. And so if we go to debt exclusion, combined with the water tanks and the ladder truck, you tend to get people that just say the heck with it and vote no on everything, regardless of what the purpose is, just because they see these giant dollar amounts. So I think putting that on debt exclusion, unfortunately, risks the DPW expansion. And then
no, within the levy is the only way to do it. So we're done at the end of town meeting, and they can go ahead and buy the property. Otherwise, it's delayed, David.
Yeah, I think Amy's recommendation was to put the other 250 from the other article on debt exclusion and keep this away from a debt exclusion override.
The culvert.
Correct.
And Carolyn, do we know that is that a grant that is possible or probable, definite yet? The $1 million one for MVP East Street. I'm just wondering, we don't want to plan to borrow it. And what, I mean, if we don't get the $1 million grant, we wouldn't be spending that 250,000. Is that right?
Right. Can you scoot to the, I don't have the hard copy here, Linda. Can you scoot
sorry.
to the-
Yeah,
can you
yeah,
scoot
yeah,
to
yeah.
the Article. And, you know, I'm speaking on behalf of Scott. There is a timing issue. Any grants, there's a timing issue. So if this doesn't if this becomes a debt exclusion, and doesn't pass, that certainly, well, it's the same thing. If it doesn't pass, you don't get it. But we have to have this at this wording for town meeting in order to get it. It is a, yeah, I'm sorry, Scott's not here to go over the details of it.
Yeah,
I
it
don't-
couldn't. Exclusion.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have to be the short term, as David's talking about, but you're using short term, I think, to mean within the levy, David. Okay, all right. Now yes.
Sorry, I should have been clear on that.
No, we actually do short term borrow for debt exclusion too, until we get the bond eventually. So that's okay. No, that is often the language that I use too when I'm trying to explain things. But now I get it. I was just having a little trouble following your question, but I think it was answered. Right.
Susan had her hand up. Susan, do you have something? No?
Oh, we lost her.
Oh, she put the hand down, so maybe she changed her mind. Okay, we'll keep going. So thoughts? What does the committee want to do or recommend?
On this one, right?
We're back on 16, I think.
Yes.
I want to recommend that we don't take out that dollar amount out of stabilization and do the debt exclusion.
Oh, not debt exclusion. You mean borrowing?
I'm sorry. No, exactly. I meant borrow. Sorry.
Borrowing with levy. Okay.
Borrow against the levy.
Yes.
And paid back in the same proportions, the 15, 15, 30, or
That's fine.
that-
Yeah.
Yes.
and understanding I would be that we should be borrowing the part that comes out of the water and sewer reserves as well. Amy, borrow the whole 325.
That is debatable. I mean, I don't know I don't know off the top of my head what's in the water reserves.
There's
And-
enough money. Sewer is the really tight one, and when I say tight, I mean really tight.
Then I think we should borrow for the 3. I mean, I kind of think that's what we're going to end up doing for the whole. We're going to end it will be a debt exclusion, but when we eventually do the DPW, we're going to be borrowing on it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
as long as everybody understands that, and I think department heads have to understand too, that if we get capital requests for the fall, I mean, the chances of them are going to be pretty close to 0, or they're going to be very, very small. I mean, they're not going to be big truck purchases and other things that we've done the last few years, because I just don't see how it's going to happen.
I agree.
Okay, so what do we need? You gonna make a motion to modify this, or how are we?
Sure.
Gonna
I'll make a motion that we recommend the acquisition of the property, but to change it from taking from the stabilization to borrowing within the levy, and borrowing from water reserves and borrowing from the sewer reserves.
It would just be saying that we borrow the full 325,000 and we pay it back from those 3 sources.
Correct.
We'll get the language right.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
We get a second?
Yes, please.
I'll second it.
All right, motion by Amy, a second by Paul. Any further discussion on this one? All right, Paul,
Yes.
Shardul,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes,
Amy,
Yes,
David, yes.
17,
17 it is.
aim high.
Do you need any more explanation?
No,
Okay,
I'll make a motion.
Motion to approve Article 17.
There you go. I'll go for second then. Go ahead.
All right, that was a motion by Andy and second by Paul.
Shardul.
Shardul.
motion by Shardul.
Oh, sorry about that. And second by Paul. Yep, I'll just roll call it. Paul,
Yes.
Shardul,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes,
and Amy,
yes,
David, yes.
so Scott has presented this to you. Do you have any other questions?
yes. Sorry, the water tanks. The $9 million, how it was going to be paid for is mainly out of the water. And the effect to the taxpayers is going to be an average of about $8 on an average tax bill on their water bill. That's my understanding. Someone yesterday out in the public asked me a question, and they said if they have sewer, their bill will go up 4 times the amount. And I don't quite understand that. So my question is it based on our water bill? But for me, so say my house is $8 a month because I don't get sewer, and it's based on I have septic. So my average bill might be $8. But say Paul, who might have a sewer because
I've
his
learned- I think they're wrong though, Amy. The
Oh.
rate that I'm paying for water will go up. The rate that I'm paying for sewer will not go up. However, the sewer bills are usually what, double? I think it's usually 2 times your usage is they double the number of gallons of water you use to establish what your sewer usage is. Is that approximately right?
Dan, I think can answer your question. He's got his hand up.
Yep.
Yeah, when I first started with the town, sewer was calculated as a multiplier of water.
Yep.
So it was, I believe it was 2.5 or 3 times what the water charge was if you were on sewer. If you were on sewer, you paid about 3 times what the water bill was. Now the water charge and the sewer charge are separate. It's based on water usage, but the water rate is much lower than the sewer rate. So they don't double the usage, the rate's just about twice as high. So if the average bill goes up $8 a quarter on water, it won't change on sewer.
Sure, right.
okay.
Okay, so I'll recommend, we already have a motion, don't we?
No, not yet.
I'll make a motion to approve, if that's okay, Amy, we can talk more.
Second.
Motion by Paul, second by Shardul. Any other discussion on this one? All right, Paul,
Yes.
Shardul,
Yes.
Andy,
yes,
Amy,
Yes,
David, yes.
okay.
All right, drinking water.
Again, Scott did explain this. If you have additional questions, I'll see what I can answer.
Motion to approve Article 19.
Second.
Motion by Shardul, second by Paul. And I will roll call. Paul,
Yes.
Shardul,
Yes.
Andy,
yes,
Amy,
yes,
David, yes.
So Linda, if you're okay with this, you are so in the weeds with this. Do you mind giving an explanation of the ambulance service and?
Okay, so last year we voted something a little over $400,000 to get the ambulance service going, get staff in, and the expenses of getting the new department up and running. And it was explained at the time that probably was not going to be enough, and we would look into it. We would have to continue to subsidize it. I think it was hard to know then, but they at least this year have started to take money in. The goal of the the financial goal, they've got great goals, but the financial goal is like an enterprise fund, even better than an enterprise fund, that the incomes covers the expenses, and then the excess income, which they are anticipating to have when they're up and fully running, it has to be held in the ambulance. Okay. So the 185,000 is not another full year. It's enough to get them to the fall town meeting. At that point, we are going to put it into the general budget. It's going to be another budget item. It's not going to be separate and run by an article anymore. We're going to pull it into the general budget, and all of the revenues are then going to be also paid into the general fund for the purpose of the ambulance. So whatever the ambulance budget is, we will take these special revenues that have been received during the year, and I think it's sort of 10 to 15,000 a month once we're up and rolling. We have the first 13,000 in for October services, so there's a lag that we have to get through first. But we will be getting that much in monthly, and begin to use less and less of free cash as those revenues increase. That's about as far as I can go with it at this point, except to say that the 185 is taking us to October. That was the initial plan. We've got to put enough in there to get to the fall, because even if it needed more in free cash, we don't have more in free cash right now. Maybe we'll have more in free cash in the fall. And again, that's one of those things we're going to have to juggle. Then how much free cash has been certified as of July 1, how much is to go to other purposes in the budget, because there's talk of, that there will be needs after the compensation study has been worked up. There's this. And didn't we just talk about something else from free cash that we need? Anyways, that's part of the mix is what we'll be looking at. So this is another bridge. It's described a bridge budget, and this may take us a few years. I know that they're doing everything they can to step it up and have us into the level of service that the income fully pays for the budget.
It's possibly not some, correct?
I didn't hear.
And possibly more.
Possibly more, but that would never be used in the general fund budget.
General fund, right, yes, I understand.
Okay. Have to stay.
We'll get paid back over time. We just, yeah.
That's right. Yes, we would want it. There would be an initial payback of the free cash when they make more money. Yes, because we made this loan from free cash.
And just to help explain how in the future, when it becomes pretty much sustainable in the next few years, each year you'll vote money out of the special revenue fund to fund the ambulance budget.
Right. That part that says how we're funding the budget. You have your funding portion up here. I don't know. I don't see myself. I don't see what I'm holding. What can I do? There. Okay. The part up here that says how we fund the budget, there'll be a line in there for special, whatever the name of the special ambulance receipts reserve. It's called ambulance receipts reserved. That will be a line in here too.
Okay.
What's funding cannot exceed the budget though. I mean, that will only be there enough to cover the ambulance budget. So we will be working that out. It was the best way to introduce the budget when we were working on this, this as a new program a year ago. That way the town got to vote on it separately instead of just slipping into the budget somewhere, so that this has been an active decision on the town to go ahead and support these services. And the timing's been good as far as initially that we had the free cash to subsidize it. And hopefully it will be taking less and we will start seeing a return on it, as Paul reminded me of these funds that we're advancing.
Would it just make sense for the public to start to see that line item in there, even though it'll be blank? Because eventually it'll just start filling in, and you have had some revenue coming in.
Yes, we've had, they're being held in the reserve fund.
Right.
So let's say the receipts reserve, ambulance receipts reserve is called. Get used to that. So we have 13 now. If it continues on, we expect maybe we'll have, 80 to 100 at fall. So when we slip this back into the budget, we will then be able to fund it. We will fund it we will also send in the 85,000, whatever we have in the account at that time. We will use that and help budget too.
Okay.
And thereafter. So
Right.
that's our next step now, is to get it in and organized now that we have revenues.
Yeah, might be good to mention that at the town meeting when we get.
Yes. Yes.
If you hadn't already thought of that, which I'm sure you have. Thank you.
It's hard to make this not complicated.
I know.
It's so complicated.
No, this is an investment for the town, and I think it's a great idea. And we've had some good breaks. We got an inexpensive starter ambulance. So, all right, you need a motion? I'll make a motion to recommend or approve Article 20.
Second.
Second by Shardul. A roll call. Paul.
Yes.
Shardul.
Yes.
Andy.
Yes.
Amy.
I'm just running next door to get my car.
Yes.
And David. Yes.
All right, the MVP East Street project. This is once again, it's a cash match, 25% of the $1 million project that is funded by the MVP program. So it's a request for 250,000. Scott did explain it. But again, if we don't get the grant, then the point is moot. We won't need the 250,000, but we're hopeful. But we do need this town meeting vote.
I'll make a motion to recommend, or I'll second it. Sorry.
Recommend. Wait a minute. We put this in for where's the funding that's in here? Oh, we don't have funding in here.
Yeah.
For the 250.
For the 250.
Oh.
How did we miss that?
How did we miss that?
We missed that today.
Okay, and I have it in my sheet for borrowing, but we did not get the language in there for borrowing. But good rehearsal here tonight. Amy, are you suggesting that we do that out of stabilization?
No.
No.
Free, borrow or debt exclusion.
Carolyn, how do we know how debt exclusion would impact the timeline on this? When the grant is? Do we have to find out about that?
Yeah, I'd have to find out. I mean, it's how many weeks after town meeting?
This was, and then we're putting it out for possible failure. And this is, I think David said a brainer that we do the 1 to 4 match here. So we don't want to risk it.
If you have the room, put it in the borrow, and then in the fall, if we really need something, that can go debt exclusion. But maybe the only reason why I said debt exclusion on this is because I think a lot of people would go for this because we would be getting 750,000 towards it. So I think it would be something a lot of people would go for. But if we don't know the timing and something like that, then let's go for regular borrowing within the levy. And then in the fall, if something really needs to be done, then we can ask for debt exclusion at that time.
And I think because of the timing, correct me if I'm wrong, but even if we put this under borrowing within the levy and then we got our reimbursement for the other 75% back, we couldn't then turn around and use that for capital in the fall because it would have to be certified as free cash for the following year, correct?
I'm not following how you said that.
Yeah.
So if we voted to spend $1 million and, you know, we have to have the money, I guess, there to spend, right?
Know which part gets spent first. So if we get if they're paying 750, we've appropriated it. We've appropriated by saying we're going to borrow.
Okay.
Okay, then when, assuming what we've done in the past is spend the grant money first, we get to our 250, then we're advancing it, then that does need to be out of our general funds. Then we borrow it to pay ourselves back, basically, but they will consider the vote to borrow as an appropriation.
Okay.
Oh,
It doesn't really make sense to borrow something that might or might not happen because
borrowing doesn't have, it's just an authorization to borrow. Borrow doesn't happen until until we are at that point. Don't worry.
Oh, okay. So it's not like we're incurring anything.
Right. Right. That's exactly right. No.
And Linda, just a question of if we voted now and we change this, you change this language to say it's going to come out of the borrowing from the levy. We get the grant, we don't use the money, we don't need the 250 to borrow till after the fall meeting. Can we go to fall meeting and exchange and say we want to borrow from the levy for the 250 instead and cancel borrowing from within the levy? Go to an exclusion rather.
No.
You can't.
No.
Okay. You can't.
No.
You can't flip it later with a vote.
Yeah. This
Okay.
would be it.
All right. So you're going to put this in as vote from the levy. Is what we're.
It's going to be borrowing, and it's assumed that it's short-term borrowing within the levy because we are not putting in the debt exclusion language. So that would be the presumption.
Okay.
And just based on the dollar amount, Linda, between this article and the one for the property acquisition, I mean, that is out our entire capital allotment for the year.
You kind of tapped out 575,000 between the two. So I would really consider putting in increasing the debt budget for fall town meeting so that we help cover these payments as they come due. So I'll take another look at that.
If we take it from stabilization, do we have more flexibility in the future on taking it from different debts?
If we take it from stabilization, first, we don't take it until we spend it. So it would be the same thing, just like we don't borrow until we're there. It's going to stay in stabilization until we're at the point of spending. So it's not going to leave it right away. It won't have gone yet. If we don't need it, if we don't get the grant, it's going to stay in stabilization. So, but if you're asking if we decide later we'd rather borrow than take it out of stabilization, I think I think I wouldn't do that. I would just change the character of your future borrowing. Instead of your next, like David suggested earlier, instead of the next item that you would borrow 250,000 for, you take that out of stabilization, or the other way around, or whatever. Just, I don't think you should revisit things. We've got so much new business, and we all forget what's going on. I don't know. I may have just talked in circles, but. Sorry. I just don't, I guess bottom line is I don't think that's a good idea. I think you should decide and that we go ahead with it and then we work with what we've got later on.
And I'm fine with that. I mean, as long as we understand that if something comes up capital wise, I mean, there's not going to be many wish list items or any wish list items this year. And if we have something that's an absolute necessity, it may have to come from a debt exclusion or from stabilization or wherever at the time, depending on what it is.
Or we start using debt exclusion more than we have in the past. Yeah.
Which I don't think most people are in favor of, it seems, just from past experience. So it kind of puts those things at risk.
All right. So is the motion as made and seconded sufficient, or do we need to modify it?
I think we need to because we need to specify that the funding will be coming from borrowing within the levy, correct?
Yeah, we will put in the borrowing language and we will not put in debt exclusion language. We'll put in the borrowing language. It's pretty much. Let's see. No, that wasn't it because that was stabilization. Sorry, we don't have borrowing language in this one. Okay. It's not long language at all. It really just mentions borrowing, authorize the treasurer to borrow. It gets long and complicated when we do the debt exclusions, but this is going to be simple, that you're approving this through borrowing the 250,000, and we will get that language in.
Okay, so as we first and second, we're okay as we are to just vote, you're saying?
I think just for clarity, so we don't have any issues.
Okay, you want an amendment? All right, I'll withdraw the original motion. And I'd like to make a motion to approve Article 21 with the addition of specific language to not appropriate, but to borrow the money. Authorize the treasurer to borrow the money.
Second.
Motion by Paul, second by Shardul. Any other discussion on this? All right, sure. Paul,
Yes.
Shardul,
Yes.
Yes.
and David. Yes. Did I skip Andy? Sorry.
Amy, yes.
Your little
On the
box
alphabet too.
screen hard to keep track of.
Where are we now?
22, which is assessors.
Okay.
Do you have any questions about that? Dan is here. He has explained it before.
Motion to approve Article 22.
So I'll second it.
Motion by Shardul, second by Paul, and a roll call. Paul,
Yes.
Shardul,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Amy. Oh, she's muted.
Yes.
And David, yes.
You are done.
Okay.
3 is the last one, and that is a planning board one. And aren't you glad you don't have to read and decide on that one?
Yeah. Highly charged.
And
Yeah.
David, I can explain, I had put a placeholder in for levy design, another level of levy design. The timing wasn't right from town meeting to when the grant was due and the work that the engineers had to do, so we'll hold off on that.
Okay, perfect. And last thing on the agenda, any unforeseen items 48 hours in advance of meeting? So anybody have anything? If not, Paul?
My time to shine, yes. I make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All right, motion by Paul, second by Shardul. Roll call. Paul,
Yes.
Shardul,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
David, yes. Thank you, everyone.